Just want to get the recording started before we keep going. Okay. So, probably the first thing we should do is I should explain what this is about, really. Um,
Yeah.
so, I've been watching MMA now for probably 4 years, and I can't really tell you what drew me to it. It was more like I think it was seeing the fight between Alistair Overeem and Jairzinho Rosenstrike. Funny enough, that KO where
Yeah.
Overeem lip came off, and I was just like, "What?" I didn't know that there was a sport out there at the time where people could just, basically beat each other up for money. So I was like, "Oh, dang!" And it's weird because it doesn't even fit my personality. I don't think. Like I'm not like like I don't feel like I like to like look at a lot of violence and stuff. So I never really understood what drew me to it, but the more I saw, the more interested I got. Started watching more consistently, started learning more of the fighters, and like kind of going back and look at some of the older veterans like Anderson Silva, Frank Shamrock, Frank Mir, Brock Lesnar, all that. And with that, I watch a lot of media as well. So I've always thought like there are so many different questions that I feel like I could ask fighters. Almost like an ego thing. Like I could ask them better than some of the media members that ask questions. Because you see the theme of like it's every single fight they ask the exact same things over and over. Not really super interesting questions outside of like if there's something specific that's happened to a fighter before that. Um, so yeah, I just want to use a platform to ask the questions that actually interest me and just kind of build some good relationships and have some good conversation.
Nice. That's really nice. I think it's different than the one I'm used to, and I definitely appreciate it. Appreciate the support.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming here because this is a very new thing for me. So to get the number 10 ranked UFC welterweight in the world to be the first person to come here and talking about this is pretty big. So I appreciate you coming here as well. A
No
lot.
problem, man. My pleasure.
So my first question for you, which actually wasn't going to be part of the interview, at first, but now since we're one day removed from the UFC card, what did you think of it from yesterday overall?
So, I didn't get to watch all the card, but I watched the last fight. I think it was amazing. Just to see uh, Holloway and Korean Zombie the way they both for me both guys are legends,
Mhm.
and both guys have kind of all the skills like they're a little bit different in styles, but they are guys that have experience, that have been in there so many times, that know what they're going through. And just to see Holloway, be able to perform the way he performs, even though he has been doing this for so long, still getting better, still, getting these guys, legends, legendary guys, and really tough guys. You know, I don't know. I just feel like Max is still improving little by little, even though he's already one of the best. And Korean Zombie, man, I think that it's unfortunate to see him retire, but I think it's the right move for him. I think
Yeah,
he's gonna, really be able to enjoy his life and enjoy everything he has built. And we are sad because we are not gonna watch him anymore because
yeah.
it's always amazing to see him. But still, I'm happy for him. And then I watched some of the fights of I had we had three guys fighting from Kill Cliff over there, and two
Hmm.
of them won. One unfortunately didn't. That was Yusaku Kinoshita. He's
Oh,
a
okay.
Japanese guy. Yeah,
Yeah.
he trained a lot with me for my fight against RDA. I worked with him a lot because he's a southpaw, and I think he was doing pretty well in the fight in the first round. Like it was only one round, but he was doing really well. And then he got caught with the body shot, and it was unfortunate. But hopefully he's gonna get back soon and strong. He's 23 years old, so
Oh,
hopefully we'll
yeah.
see him in action soon.
Yeah, plenty of time. Plenty of time. Yeah, I pretty much watched the whole card. Well, most of the card. I think when I messaged you, I said that I woke up at 6:30.
Yeah,
I was like, oh, fight's already started. I didn't even realize. Um, So yeah, there were a lot of good fights on the card. There was oh, what was his name? The last name is Acosta. He's a heavyweight
Yeah,
guy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Did you see his KO that he had?
Yeah, I think when it happened, I think I was doing something with my son,
Hmm.
kind of watching it and giving food, giving breakfast to my son at the same time.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I
Yeah,
saw you post on your Instagram that you had the pizza night too from
yeah,
last
yeah.
night.
Last night that was awesome. That was really good.
That's cool.
The
I do.
sourdough pizza.
Oh, you make a lot of pizza. Yeah. I cook a lot myself, but pizza is one thing that I've never made before. So
Yeah,
I gotta try it at some point.
yeah. It's nice. It's like it's not hard. I do sourdough pizza, so it
Mm,
just like takes long because I have to start the day before. So I'll start at around 4, and then at around 10, I'm putting the dough in the fridge, and then I'm gonna bake it the next day,
mm.
but at night. So it's gonna stay like 12 or over 12 hours in the fridge,
Oh,
just fermentating and
right.
letting it stay in there. So you gotta be patient.
I can do that. I can do that. Um, so another question I have for you, kind of like that actual starting question. Um, can you talk to me a little bit? I guess not really a question, but could you talk to me a little bit about your upbringing and kind of how that upbringing led you into wanting to be a fighter?
So my upbringing, it was a little bit different. I would say that than the normal. I was born in New Jersey. I think a lot of people they know like I'm born in New Jersey. My mom is Brazilian. My dad is Chilean. But how that came to happen, my grandmother on my mother's side, she worked for the government in Brazil and she
Mm,
traveled a lot. So at some point, she lived many years in Chile.
mm,
That's how my mom got to meet my dad. So my mom went to Chile. I believe she was maybe 7 or 8 years old, and
mm,
she lived there until she was 21. That's when she got pregnant of me. And she met my dad when she was around 15 years old.
mm,
And then at 21, so when my mom was 21, my grandmother, she moved to the United States. She moved to New Jersey. My mom stayed in Chile with my dad, and when when they found out she was pregnant, my grandmother said, "Hey, I would like you to come. You and uh, my dad, so both of them come over here and just be able to." I'm gonna ask you 1 second. It's because my son woke up here,
I know
and
you're
I'm gonna
okay.
take him out. Okay, I'm back. So you put a cut on that, and we continue.
Yeah. That part didn't even happen.
Yeah. So continuing. So my grandmother, she asked my mom, and she said like, "Hey, it's gonna be your first son. I think it would be good for you to come here. You and your husband, that you come here, stay here with us, so that I can help you with everything." That's when my dad and my mom they went to New Jersey and started living with my grandmother over there, and that's why I was born in New Jersey.
Okay.
But from them, like at that point, that was just supposed to be 1 or 2 years that they were going to stay there, and then they would go back to Chile. But it ended up like they started this. They decided to stay, so I started. Just we were living there, and my mom was training karate. My dad was working. My dad worked with many different things. He worked initially in like a watch company. Then he worked selling flowers, and then he started driving trucks.
Yeah.
And my grandfather on my dad's side, he also lived in New Jersey, but that's a whole different story. Because he moved to the U.S. I think when my father was about 4 years old from Chile to the U.S. and like he lived many years here and in New Jersey, so it kind of was like two different things, but it ended up like crazily working, for them to everybody live in the same state. So we lived here for a while, like in New Jersey for a while. My parents got divorced they separated when I was 4 years old.
Mm.
And from that point, my dad started, like, he got his own place. He kept on working and he started working on these papers uh, to permanently live here in the US. My mom, on the other side, she was working as well. She had already, got her black belt in karate and everything. And I used to go with her all the time to karate. Since I was about 3 to 4 years old, I started going all the time with her, and I trained and I also watched her train a lot. We spent maybe probably 3 hours per day at the gym between me training and then her training and watching her and everything. So that was always something. I would say like martial arts have always been in my life, like Van Damme movies, Bruce Lee movies,
Mm.
uh, Power Rangers. I love Power Rangers. I would do all the dances and all that crazy stuff when I was a kid. Plus, the karate and Karate Kid and all that. So that has that for me, like it wasn't even like I don't know. It wasn't like I saw that as something that it was present. It was my life. It has always been like that. I never grew up not having martial arts in my life. So I say it's pretty much like I was born for this. I just didn't know I was gonna do it as a profession, as what I
Yeah.
was gonna do. But then when I was 7 years old, 6 to 7 years old, that's when my mom really she wasn't able to renew all her papers, so she had to leave to Brazil. And then I went with her to Brazil, uh, moved to Brazil, trained a little bit of karate until I was like about 10 to 11. And then at that point, I stopped training. I didn't want to train anymore. I didn't like it was a moment where I started kind of like hanging out more with my friends and doing other stuff. And karate was very kind of strict and disciplined, and I was a little bit like rebellious at that point. So I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. Let me do other things. My friends are playing soccer and are doing other sports. That's what I want to do. So I started doing all these other sports, and something that isn't good, but was something that was part of me, like in school and also like when we hanged out with friends. Like sometimes I would get into like fights, but it wasn't like fights like I was picking fights or anything like that. It
Mm.
was just things that actually we fought each other for fun in a way,
Yeah.
like, but it wasn't at all like sportive or anything like that. But I had a lot of fun doing that. And then I had some friends that started training Muay Thai. And
Mm.
then I thought to myself, hey, I think I'm going to start training Muay Thai because if we're going to start getting into fights, I better know what I'm doing. So at that point, I was 15 years old, and I started training Muay Thai. Now, with 6 months of training, that's when I had my first amateur competition
Mm.
of Muay Thai, and that's the moment where I really decide to become a fighter. That's the moment where like the years of discipline and everything that I had back from karate and from my mom and my dad as well. My dad also is an athlete. He played rugby
Okay,
from
cool.
I believe 14 or 15 years old until he was 43 years old. So he played in Chile and then he played in the US rugby, and at a very high level. When he was 18, I believe, he played the World Cup in South Africa. So he was
Oh,
part of the national team of Chile, and Chile is really good at rugby. So I wouldn't say like it's not the best 5 countries, but it's always in between, the 15 countries that are really good at rugby. So
yeah.
they did go to the World Cup, and he got to play over there. So that kind of was in me, even though like the sport and all this, always my parents, both of them, even though they weren't together anymore, they have always had a really good relationship in raising me and knowing like we have to, teach them the best things. And they always taught me like, I don't care if you like or not sports, you have to do a sport. It can be
Mhm.
whatever you want. It doesn't have to be fighting. It doesn't have to be rugby, but you have to do a sport just so that physically you're fine.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that you can learn from sports, from discipline, and also things that just strategy and all this that you get from sports that is really important for whatever you're gonna do. That's what they taught me. So at that point, when I was 15 years old and I had all that base, put into me when I was a kid, it kind of clicked. I had my first amateur competition. I love like the adrenaline and what I felt and just the feeling. And I lost my first fight, but just the feeling, I had my mom watching the fight and she was super excited. And just all that put together kind of clicked on my mind. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Mhm.
And from that point on, I didn't have any fights in the street anymore because for me, like it was like, hey, I gotta do this. And this was a big thing in the gym too. They kicked anyone out that had street fights. So I was like, no, I don't want to get kicked out. I want to, take this seriously. And another thing too, like I started, and that's something like I talk a lot to young guys, and it's totally personal. But for me, it was a big thing that I did, like, and it was natural. It wasn't like sacrifice or anything. It was just made sense in my mind. I wouldn't like hang out like so much with my friends anymore. I would still hang out, like maybe go out play soccer and things like that were good. But
Mhm.
we used to go out and stay until like 3, 4 a.m. out in the street.
Mhm.
And now after like 15, 16, when I started training and really wanting to compete, I diminished that a lot. So I
Yeah.
would maybe like in a month I would do that once or twice, but regularly I wouldn't do it because I know, hey, I gotta get my rest. And I was more interested in performing and in improving myself because it was something I was already taking seriously. Then let me see what's gonna happen with this. I wanted it to work. I didn't want to see if it was gonna work. I wanted it to work.
Yeah.
What kind of? I talked a lot, but that's kind of my answer.
No, that was perfect. I love detailness because it helps me understand kind of the process how you get there. So I don't know, you're perfectly fine. Um, so that brings us to another question. If you were born in New Jersey and then you moved to Brazil when you were 7, at what point did you start learning English so well?
So I learned English, Portuguese, and Spanish since I can remember.
Oh wow.
Why? My mom speaks Portuguese. My
Mhm.
grandmother, I lived with my grandmother. She also spoke Portuguese. My dad spoke Spanish, speaks Spanish. So basically, like my first 4 years of my life, these three people were always with me.
Yeah.
And I also had my grandfather from my mom's side at some point living with us. He spoke Spanish. And I had my aunts living with us too, and they spoke Portuguese. And I lived in the US.
Yeah.
So to everyone else, I spoke English. So
Right.
it's kind of like I learned the three languages at the same time. And then I never stopped speaking any of them. Why? Uh, in the US, that was it. So at home, I spoke Portuguese and Spanish, and everywhere else, like I did go to school here, preschool, and there I spoke English and everything. So, and also in karate and everywhere else, I spoke English. So I had these three languages pretty like fluent, and I had where to practice. Once I moved to Brazil, my mom, she talked to me and she decided like she learned really good English in the US.
Mhm.
And there she started working, teaching English. So
Oh,
that was a way for her to teach and get to work with something different in Brazil. And then she talked to me, we're not gonna speak Portuguese anymore to each other. From now on, we're gonna speak English to each other. and that was a hard thing for me to get used to in the beginning because I always spoke Portuguese to my mom. But nowadays, when I look back, I said, "Hey, my mom did the best thing because I didn't even know at that point, that that would make a difference. But it's a huge difference for me for my career, and also my dad. So my dad, like, he was always really present, even though we lived, super far from each other because we were in different countries. We would in the beginning he would try to call me once a week, and he wrote me a lot of letters. And then with technology, we started getting Skype and all these kind of things. We started video chatting and talking more often, and that's why I kept my Spanish as well. Always talking to him. I would go once every year to visit him. Usually it was in winter time. Sometimes it would be in summer, but I would stay about 30 to 40 days with him. Just enjoying and making sure that we spend time together, and that's when kind of like I could practice even more my Spanish. So that's why now, like, I speak fluently Spanish, Portuguese, and English.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. I wish I could speak three languages like that.
Yeah, no, and it's crazy. Like, now that I have a son, my son is 2 years old, and since he was born, I only speak English to him. My wife only speaks Portuguese to him, and my mom and my dad, they only speak Spanish to him.
Uh,
So he kind of like English and Portuguese is totally like he understands, and that's what he's starting to speak and trying to speak to us. Spanish, he doesn't speak that much, but he understands everything. So he understands my mom, he understands my dad. So that's something that we're already kind of like trying to do with him. And it's funny because for me, it's like I'm seeing what was done to me, and I don't have memory because the memory I have is always like I speak three languages. That's what I've always known. And now to see my son, like to see that process happening with someone that is just like a sponge, he can understand everything. And then I see, like, yeah, that's why I speak three languages, because at that point, like, you can just learn anything, and and it's normal. Like, for him, like, he has had no influence yet, so everything what's happening is normal for him. And so for him, it's normal. Like, okay, my dad speaks one language, my mom speaks another one, that my grandmother and my grandfather, they speak another, and that's just how life is. So everything is good.
yeah, that's cool. During my schooling in psychology or getting my psychology degree, we learned a lot about that, like the development stages of how much easier it is for younger kids to retain information like that.
Yeah,
So that is surprising that you say that he's picking up on it so quickly because it's like taking on all this information. So by the time he gets like 15, 16, he'll be switching between each one like it's nothing. So that's pretty
yes.
cool. That's pretty cool. So another question I have for you is how did you end up fighting Thiago Santos? Because I've talked to a couple people about it, and in my group chat, I think I've mentioned you to before. I think I sent a link to it because I saw it on some random clip. And I was like, well, Thiago Santos was it at middleweight or was it at welterweight?
It was at welterweight. I don't remember, like, I don't recall if we had some kind of catch weight or something, but he did fight at welterweight at that time. I believe his Ultimate Fighter was at welterweight as well.
He's such
So
a
he
big
did.
guy. I just,
I know, and like, obviously he wasn't as big as he is in middleweight, and not as big as he's at light heavyweight, but he was already as tall as he is now, and he was pretty big. Like, for welterweight, he was crazy big. And it's a funny story because, like, at that time, like in Brazil, we didn't have much information of who we were gonna fight. We had stories and we had like some Facebook posts, and we kind of try to find out who the guy was, but there wasn't a lot of video on his fights or anything like that. And I think
yeah.
he was 7-0 at that time, and I don't remember. I was probably like 4-2,
Hmm.
something like that, and or 4-3. I didn't have a really good record before the UFC, and like this fight got offered to me
Hmm.
and to my coach at the time, Daniel from Serrato, And like we talked about it, and he said he thought it was a good opponent because he was a striker. I'm a striker as well. You know, it's tough guy, but he's has he has like really good hype here in Brazil. You know, if you beat this guy, it's gonna be good for you. And I think that you can't beat him. So let's do this fight. I said, hey, yeah, for sure, let's do it. So I had a good camp for it, and it was gonna be in a different city. And the thing is, we lost the flight to the city. So when I got there maybe like 2 or 3 hours after weigh-ins had happened.
Oh,
So I had to weigh in after everyone, and I didn't get to face off or anything. So I didn't get to see Tiago
oh,
until the day of the fight. So okay, I recover weight and everything, and like these guys are, and I remember like there was a lot of pressure too because like he was kind of like the big name, and I was just maybe like a stepping stone for him.
mm,
And then like the guys were telling me, my coaches and some other guys were saying, "Hey, you got to beat this guy decisively because if it's a close fight, I don't know, they might give it to him." And then I was already with that pressure, and okay, I'm gonna have to go out there and really finish this guy. And then comes the moment of the fight. I walk in the octagon first. He was gonna walk after, and I'm inside the octagon just waiting for him. And then Tiago walks in, and I remember he walks in. He steps right across from me at the octagon, and I look back at my coach, and I look at him. Then I look back at my coach again, and I don't say anything. But in my mind is going like, who is this guy? Right? Is this really the guy I'm gonna fight? I don't think I don't think I got the right guy because he was so like he was massive already. You know, he
yeah,
wasn't as big as him in middleweight, but a massive welterweight, much taller than me. You know, athletic, and I just looked at him like, man, this is gonna be a tough fight. And at that point is when I really took it serious about finishing him.
yeah.
Why? I didn't want to get touched. I didn't want to get hit by him because I knew it was gonna be hard. And when the fight started, it was crazy because he threw a front kick
Yep.
and it hit me, but it was good and like I could take it. And then he jumped for a Superman punch,
Um,
and that's kind of like I'm not really like I don't react moving back all the time. So when I saw that punch coming, I moved sideways
mhm.
and I threw a left hook. And my left hook, thank God, is really hard. And I landed, and he fell out right away. I land two punches in the floor, and the referee finished the fight. That was about like 15 seconds into the fight.
That
So
was
it
a
was
quick fight.
perfect. It was the best game plan. Get out, get in, and get out quick.
Wow. Now I have seen the fight before, but it has been a while. But I remember when I was thinking about my question, I was like, "Oh, I got to find out about that one, like how that fight just came into fruition." So, well, I'm glad that you were able to get in and get out for that one.
Yeah.
Especially you didn't know who your opponent was before, so that's actually
Yeah,
pretty
and it was a big win for me later because uh, when I had an interview to get into the Ultimate Fighter, what
okay.
which is what got me to the UFC eventually, and that was my biggest win, and that was a win they really talked about because Thiago was already in the UFC at that point
Mm.
and was doing really well. So they asked me, "Hey, is this Thiago Santos, the Thiago Santos from UFC that fights with us?" I said, "Yeah, that's exactly him." And I knocked him out with 15 seconds. They were like, "Oh, that's impressive. We like that." So it was a really important win for me.
Yeah. Wow. That makes it even more like a very impactful kind of experience for you just because that was like almost like a stepping stone for you to really kickstart your career in the UFC. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Um, so now I want to ask you a little bit, which I'm sure you've gotten 50 million questions about at this point, is the brain hemorrhage. Um,
yes.
yes. So kind of get a sense when you first found out the news, how did your friends and family react? Because I've seen you talk about it in the sense of they were with you with the process, and once you heard all the information about what the recovery process would be like, they would support you. But I just want to know a little more about the actual initial reaction of just you finding out the information and how the people that you told reacted.
So when I found out, I kind of like I try to break it down slowly to everyone. So first, my mom and my wife. My wife was the first one to really like I really talked openly about it, and my wife has always, had my back, and she kind of knows the mentality I have. I've always explained to her like a big idol that I have is Ayrton Senna, the Brazilian racing driver. And for me, like he made the ultimate sacrifice. I'm sure he didn't want it, but he was willing to give his life if he needed to, and that has always been my attitude. And the same thing, like I don't want it to cost my life, and I hope it doesn't. And I pray to God it doesn't, and I believe it won't. But that's the kind of attitude I put into this.
Mm.
So if it has to, be, it'll be. So that kind of like that attitude that I've always had, in a way, kind of prepared me to get this news and not go crazy about it.
Yeah.
Because I was like, man, it can actually, something bad can actually happen,
Mm.
but I'm okay. And that was the thing. Like at every moment I was in the hospital, I was okay. So I called my wife and
Yeah.
I told her and I explained what was going on. So I think like she was extremely worried,
Mm.
but at the same time, she could talk to me and see that I was okay, that I was okay. He has a bleed in the brain, but he's talking to me and he's the one explaining to me. So it would be different. I think that if somebody else was telling her and if a doctor was explaining to her
Yeah.
and I had no conditions to do that. So I think that was kind of something that also helped. And then my mom, like she she is kind of like I'm sure that she was really worried, but she is a that tough mom. She doesn't want to let me know that she's worried about things, and she's always positive and really kind of know everything's gonna be okay, and let's see what's gonna happen. And but I know that she was worried about it,
Yeah.
and in her own way, she had to deal with whatever went through her mind, and we talked about it afterwards, and she was just happy that I was able to recover, and little by little, like she was always talking to me, and she saw much of my recovery in Brazil. She was a part of, she could see every day and see me getting back to training and everything. So she reacted pretty well. Now my dad, on the other hand, I'm not gonna say he reacted bad, like in a bad way, but he's more concerned. He's not a martial artist, he's a rugby player, and that's a rough sport. But it's different, The objective of rugby is not to damage your adversary. The objective is to score. In between, you damage your adversary. So he's used to the damage, but like for him, it's not like I don't know. It's different than martial arts.
Yeah.
So I knew that for him it was going to be kind of more. Uh, it would be more of a challenge to overcome, and to be able to just be relaxed with that. And I don't like to worry my dad, especially because always like growing up far from him, I never really want to get him worried about stuff. I
Right.
just wanted him to be, relaxed and know that everything is going okay.
Mm.
So I talked to him a lot, and I explained to him what went on. But I think that I left out a lot of what actually went down,
Yeah.
like the media. A lot of it he found out only now before the fight, because I hadn't talked to him exactly how it went. I
Wow.
said, "Hey, something bad happened. I had to go to the hospital. I had, something that is serious on the brain, but I'm recovered and I'm recovering and everything's going fine. I don't know if I'm gonna get cleared to fight again or not, but we're gonna work on that, and there are great chances that I'm gonna recover." So I really explained to him what was going on, but I don't think like I didn't break it down and like my brain was bleeding and this is something
Yeah. In
serious.
details, like specific details
I
about
try
it.
to, yeah. So I think like that made it easier for him to deal with it, because still he was super worried, and then he gets in the mode, like, which I think is awesome, because it helps me a lot and opens my mind to a lot of things. Right after the fight, my dad, I was in Florida,
Mm.
so my dad drove to Florida, and he was with me for a week, over a week, I think almost 2 weeks. So the first beginning of my recovery, my dad was here. So I didn't tell him all the things, but he could see me, So he saw that I was like, I had a lot of headaches, and I was like, I couldn't like go out for so long. He took me to a lot of my sessions in the hyperbaric chamber. So he was always helping me and talking to me a lot. My dad is he likes to study a lot of things, so he was studying about this, and he was like, hey, saying, hey, now you gotta work on this and work on that. Maybe look after this for recovery. And then whenever you start training again, you got to change your style a little bit. He likes to find solutions. So that's why I don't like to worry him, because then he goes crazy trying to find all the solutions for everything. So yeah, it was different, but I kind of know my dad also, so I knew that what he wanted to was to help.
Yeah.
And after the news came out, now close to the fight, kind of like he talked to me, and he it was funny because he said like, hey, I don't know if I'm going to be able to watch your fights again,
Mm.
but he left it clear, but I don't want you at all to stop because of that. I want you to keep on doing your thing, keep on becoming, become a champion, be the best fighter. I just don't know if I'm going to be able to watch your fights because it gets me really anxious, but do what you got to do, don't worry about me, and do it, because I know that. And then he said, like, I've seen the work you put on the last year. I know that you have been working to become better and to evolve. So I totally support you. It's just like I am too anxious at this point, and I'm too worried to watch you fight. But hey, go and do it, and I'll watch it afterwards. So he watched my RDA fight only after, like, he knew the outcome and everything was fine.
Yeah, and I mean, in a sense, it doesn't surprise me. Like that's how your family reacted, especially because you've been fighting for well, how many years now? Over a decade.
Yes.
So like, and you say your family's very close, so I imagine they've been there and seen all the ups and downs, everything. But with something so serious, uh, I can see how that could make them pretty anxious. But all things considered, I'm glad that you still like had that support there and kind of I would imagine it helped motivate you still to want to keep going and like, okay, if I have the people around me support me, that's a good sign that I can get back in there. So
Right. And I'll add to that. My dad was in the arena at the Apex when I was knocked out by Jeff. My
hmm.
dad was watching that live in the
Wow.
arena, right there, right next to the octagon. So that's like hard to see your son get knocked out like that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's every couple of months I'll watch fights and I'll be like, man, maybe I should just start training. Maybe I should start training. Maybe I should try to become a fighter. And then I'll start asking my friends, like I'll ask my girlfriend, I'll ask my sisters, because I have three sisters. And then I have both my parents, so I have a pretty big family. Um, and I asked them, like, if I became a fighter, would you go and watch my fights? And all of them said no, because they wouldn't want to see me get beat up. So I'm like, all right, well, I don't. Then that's fine. I'm like, okay, maybe I should become a fighter. But I do actually want to potentially start training at some point. Um, it's starting with jujitsu in the city that I live in right now, because I stay in Toledo. There is a jujitsu gym out there, and trying to figure out how I can work in the time to start going. Just because, I mean, I watch the sport so much, I might as well try to train one of the martial arts. So uh, that kind of veered off of the question, but yeah, yeah. I can understand, especially why your dad would have
Yeah.
that kind of reaction, especially if he was there for the knockout. So then hearing the information after, that makes sense. Um, so kind of going back to that night as well, I've heard different fighters like after they suffer a knockout loss, it's like initially when it happens that you almost forget like what happened. Like you're there, but you're not really there, and then maybe it's like 15 minutes later, you're like, oh, okay, now like I'm awake. Like I saw something about Kamaru Usman after the Leon Edwards head kick. He said he doesn't even remember the 15 minutes after that happened until like I think he was either in the hospital or in the locker room. So is that something that you also experienced, or is it what was that process like for you?
It, it's funny because I have like that was the first time I was knocked down,
Right.
and I have been knocked down very few times. So I
Mm,
was knocked down against Barbarina, against Thompson,
mm,
and then against Jeff Neal multiple times before getting knocked out. And that's it. So I've never been knocked down, not even in training
yeah.
before that. So it's funny because I don't know, maybe it's like the amount of damage I can take, but I don't have like I do miss a little bit of my memory, but it's very little. So
Mm,
the Jeff Neal fight, I remember like most of the fight, and the shots that dropped me, I don't remember right what shot it was. I remember just being surprised. So I remember like I'm fighting, then I don't know what happened, and I'm in the floor. And that's when I remember already again. And then at the point of the knockout, so if you watch the knockout again, there's one first punch. He's kind of like walking me into the cage, and he hits me with a left hand. I remember if it's a straight left, but I think it's a straight left that backs me up to the like to the cage. That's the last punch I kind of remember.
yeah.
Then all the uppercuts, all that in the octagon, like I'm fighting back and I'm throwing punches. I have no memory of that.
Wow.
And then I fall face to the floor. I have memory of falling face to the floor. Now my memory is different than what actually happened.
Yeah.
What I thought that had happened is I had fallen face to the floor, and he comes in and grounds and pounds me, and I'm kind of like not reacting, and the referee stops it. That's what I thought had happened,
Wow.
but it's kind of a mix. It's like a crazy memory, and then I do remember being like sitting on the stool, and the doctors are talking to me and everything, and they're gonna announce Jeff as the winner, and then I'm like telling the doctors, "Hey, get out of here. I want to stand over there." And you can see that in the video. Like I stand up and I walk next to the referee just to stand there, and let them announce Jeff the winner. And I just want to be there because that's something everybody like. Whenever the fighter can do that, that's what they do, unless he has to, be taken away from there for some medical reason.
Right.
But I just felt like, no, I'm good. I want to be here, and I want to, just show that I'm okay. So, and from then on, like I kind of remember most of the things, maybe like not perfectly because we forget some things,
Yeah.
just normal. But like I remember from there, I walked back, uh, and when I'm walking back, I had my camera guy because I got a YouTube channel now, and that's kind of like where I started my YouTube was with that fight week. So I had my camera guy there with me, and when I walk backstage, the first thing I see is my camera guy, and then I tell him like to start filming,
Yeah.
and then I say some things, and it's like it's the video that I posted after my last fight. Now is
Mm,
a video that I posted in Instagram, and that's me talking right after that Jeff fight. So that speech, I have a brain bleed, and that's how I'm speaking. That's an example that I use to say, hey, it was a serious thing. But me, I don't know if it's my body. I believe it's God protecting me. I was okay. I was like I had something bad going on with me, but I was like physically, my body was like working to recover, and I had a great recovery during the whole
mm.
process. So it was crazy. Like I do remember a lot of it. I remember my second round. My second round with Jeff Neal was a round where I actually fought good considering everything that had happened. Like I was knocked down 3 times in the first round. I cannot know at what point the brain bleed happened. I think it could have been in the first round. Why? Because I never recovered after that first round.
Mm,
So I was wobbly the whole fight. So my second round, I barely got hit, but I was able to kick Jeff a lot,
yeah.
move in and out and everything. But all that round, I was wobbly. I had like I was seeing him like moving back and forth in my vision, but I was fighting and I was doing what I could do. But I remember I remember what I was thinking about, and I was just thinking like I cannot get hit. because I've never been like this before. If this guy touches me, I think I'm gonna go down. And
Mm.
I'm working on I gotta win this fight. So what do? I kick him, I keep the distance, I work, and that was like it was for me, I say like it's a good experience just because I realized like how I could fight even in a very, very hard situation, very like challenging. I was able to think and to work like what am I gonna do at this point? So it's funny to try to remember all the fighting. I have a lot of memory of this fight.
Yeah. Yeah, and that just makes it all the more impressive that you told me that. Like you on shaky legs just from that first round. It's still, obviously there's a finish in the third round, but you went a whole round and were still be in there and still, take the fight. Because if you never told me that, I would have never known that that was the case.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to look at it from that perspective. And because like I said, I've heard people talk about the getting knocked out, what happens after, but it's interesting to see what kind of like just getting rocked in that first round could affect how the rest of the fight goes. So interesting. That is very interesting perspective, especially just because like I said, people they forget everything or they forget most of what happens. But um, yeah, that's interesting. Um, I won't ask you too many more questions about the brain hemorrhage thing. My last one for that is also I saw you mention something about how it seemed like in your last fight with RDA that the refs were kind of like, they were being a little more cautious with you just because of the information that they knew going into it. Um, do you think that that's something that you will want to bring up the refs like, hey, like that's, that happened. You don't have to be super cautious with me in your fights going forward. Or do you think that that's something that refs are going to start taking into consideration with your fights going forward?
I feel like it's something really new. Like it's something that, you know, hasn't happened much in MMA, and especially in the UFC. I don't know if this ever happened before. So the whole process was really like everybody was really cautious. That's why it was so hard to get me cleared. I had to go through a whole bunch of exams and to a whole bunch of specialists and really like show the commission that I really was doing good. And then when I got there, they were examining me and like we always like before we go to we when we weigh in,
Mm-hmm.
we have a medical exam right after that, and they go through everything, also like neurological stuff.
Right.
And this time was no different, but they were kind of like just keeping an extra eye on me to make sure that everything was really okay. And then everything was good. I got cleared to fight. The night of the fight went down the way it went, and I didn't know that there wasn't anything different. So they didn't tell me before the fight. But right after the fight, when I went backstage into the medical room, that's something that's normal. They always do a checkup. And then the commissioners come in and they congratulate me and they say, hey, man, you fought a great fight. You fought, especially your game plan or all the strategy was exactly as it should be because we let the referee know that if anything happened, if you were touched a little bit harder and it looked like you were rocked or something, we wanted, the fight to be stopped. And at that point, I was like, damn, I was fighting with that against me and I didn't even know. Thank God they didn't tell me before because maybe that would have, kind of got me concerned about that. But yeah, they were keeping an eye and they would like, if I got knocked down or rocked really bad and showed that I wasn't, capable of fighting at a high level, probably the fight would have been stopped. And it could be an early stoppage. But with all this said, I understand because like the first thing is our health. The show is really good. Everybody's gonna have a good time enjoying the fights and everything. But first thing is the health, and the guy that put on the show that it's us, the fighters, and we got to be healthy. If something happens to one of us, that's going to impact the whole sport and it's going to impact the whole business. So it makes no sense to take that kind of risk. And I think they already took risk in letting me fight being the first time they see that, and I think much of it is because they really saw how healthy I was, how I had recovered so well, how seriously I took my recovery. And what I would say, like for the future, like I think that kind of like maybe I am showing a little bit of what other fighters can do if they ever go through that. I hope none of them do. But also, I think that I showed the commission and all and the UFC and everybody that yes, I have fully recovered
Mm.
and I took the necessary steps. And from here on, it's just gonna be better and better. I don't think that they should be concerned about that anymore, especially because this specialist, like the guys that really like the doctors that talked to me about it and everything they said, and they looked at the exams and they said, hey, not only you have recovered, but you are 100%. You can take damage as you took before,
Yeah.
if necessary. Your
Right.
body is capable of that, and that brings also the changes I've made. Like I'm more aware. Like, hey, I can take damage, but I don't need to.
Yeah.
So that's just gonna make me an even better fighter, and probably I'm gonna be able to have a much longer career now with these changes and all this improvement.
Okay. That's good. That's good. Because I was even thinking to myself after I heard you talk about that. I was like, oh, I couldn't even imagine how. Because I think I can't remember who the interview was that you did it with. It was a guy from ESPN. It was kind of like the balder guy, or not balder guy, but like he doesn't have a lot of hair. He had the
Yeah,
suit.
yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I'm
yeah.
talking about? I
Yeah,
can't remember his
I
name
think
right
so.
now. He's from ESPN.
I don't
Um,
know. Was it after or before the fight?
it was after. What was that guy?
In the desk, in the desk there was Kamaru. There was, I think, Alan Joban was there, and Karen.
Uh, it was. I know it was a virtual interview. It was a white guy.
Oh, virtual. Okay,
Yeah,
so okay, I know Mark Raimondi.
I think
That
so.
was after. That was like a day after the fight, or 2 days after the fight. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
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 that's
yeah.
the one I'm thinking of. Yeah. Um, yeah, because you had mentioned on there about the rep finding out like the refs were being super cautious with you. So I was very curious to know if it was before or after and like how that messed
Yeah,
up. So I'm glad that they told you after because
yeah.
yeah, yeah, I can definitely see how that could be like, oh, I really, really don't want to get it on top of everything else that was going through your head before that. And you got to add that.
Yeah.
That would be terrible. Um, so I got a couple rapid fire questions, and I got a some like future matchup questions for you, and then um, I think I got one more question after that. So, what is your favorite kind of music to listen to while you train?
Man, that's hard because I listen to so many different songs. If you go into my like, I have Spotify, and if you go to my favorite songs,
Hmm.
it makes no sense. Like I'll have like rap music, then country music, then Brazilian music, then like some crazy like jazz, and then like I listen to everything. So I would say like it's more of the mood, like the moment of my life I'm going through. I'll be listening to different things. In the past, like I really liked kind of reggaeton. That's like Latin music. It kind of gets me hyped, but that's I was training a lot with my Cuban wrestling coach in Brazil. So I was kind of like that was the mood at the time. Now recently I've been listening to a lot. Like there's Lathan Warlick is the new walkout song I'm using. So for this fight, I changed my walkout song in this long way. And then I have a lot of like songs of his that I've been listening to and I like it. And also Red Tips is another rapper that has a lot of nice songs that I've been listening to recently. So it changes a lot. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that this answer will change through time.
Well, I am the same way. Like my music taste is really all over the place. So if you have some song recommendations, please send them over. And I use Spotify, so I will send you some songs as well, especially if you said it's all over the place. Because I'll go from R&B to pop to rap to
Yeah,
like rock music to jazz. I listen to jazz when I'm in the shower a lot.
yes.
Like my go-to. I don't think I've heard any Brazilian music though. So you definitely have
I'll
to
send you some
send,
Brazilian
yeah,
music.
please send me some Brazilian music because now I'm curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I understand that. Now, country music is a surprise one. I've never heard anybody say, yeah, here, at least from the interviews I've heard, fighters talking about listening to country music while they train. But hey,
No, yeah, yeah, but I like to like it's not so much at the moment of training,
mm,
but like a pre or post training kind of like getting into the mood or just relax. Because there's some country music I feel like is really relaxing, and I like to hear it when I'm going back home and
mm,
just chill my mind and get it off of training. I feel that makes my recovery better, my rest better.
yeah, okay, interesting. Um, what about your favorite fight camp meal? Well, first, your favorite in-camp fight meal and then out-of-camp fight meal.
So in camp, I would say my breakfast, and that's something that I've always had the same, and I don't let no like I always tell my nutritionist, this can never change. You can change like the amounts that I'm gonna eat, but it has to be this. So it's sourdough bread, avocado, eggs, and fruits and coffee, black coffee. Just I don't put sugar or milk or whatever. I like coffee just like that.
Nasty.
Yeah,
That's so
and
good.
that's what I have to have every morning because that's what kind of like gives me the energy, fills up my belly, and that's a meal for me really important. Like when I'm like I wake up early. I usually train at 10 and I try to wake up maybe at 7
Hmm.
just so I can wake up, you know, really activate my mind and my body. I have breakfast at around 7:30 or 8, so I have time to digest everything.
Hmm.
But I feel like that's kind of like really sets up my morning and really gets my energy to training. So breakfast for me is the most important. And then after a fight, that's just like music. It's more about like sometimes it's sweets, sometimes it's burgers, other times it's pizza. So after this fight, I've done pizza 2 times, sourdough pizza here, so at home. And yesterday was a pizza night. Yesterday I did 10 pizzas, but we had about like 7 or 8 people with us here, so everybody helped me eat it. I didn't eat it all by myself, but it changes a lot. It's more like of what when I fought against Barbarina in Arizona, I heard there was a lot of good Mexican food there. So
Hmm.
I went to a lot of Mexican places to eat, and it was amazing. So that's also like I love eating and I love cooking. So whenever like I'm in a different place, I'll kind of like look for some good spots just to try, the local food.
Yeah. Yeah. I love doing that too. Going traveling new places and trying like the buy like the ethnic food there. So like if it's a Mexican restaurant, I try to look for the ones that are owned by like people who are actually Mexican, or obviously if there's like Mediterranean food, excuse me, I'll try to find a spot that it's actually
Yeah,
people who are Mediterranean. So yeah, I've been out to Arizona one time. I gotta go and try some other Mexican restaurants. I've heard some good things about it.
yeah, it's nice, really nice place.
Yeah. Um, so what do you think about the potential matchup of you and Ian Gary? What do you think about him as a
I
fighter?
think I think it's a really exciting fight when I look at it. I've trained with Ian a lot. He's a great guy. I could say like he's a really close guy. But we've always at the same time kept it professional in the sense that he's a star, up and coming, young guy, and I'm already that guy that has been in the division for a while, is a top ranked guy that is a prospect and is a contender. So we kind of understand that at some point it can happen,
Yeah,
and we both train at Killcliff, so it's something that I think we know it can happen. We're gonna try to do it for the, let's say, highest reward. So probably, we would try to keep that for more of a top five, top three title eliminator kind of thing. But as a fight, I think it's extremely exciting. He's a great striker, really impressive, with all his skill and technique and his aggressiveness. He's not a guy that holds back.
Mm.
And me as well, I'm a striker as well. I have some other tools that I can use, and I think that would make it even more interesting. But I know that, the matchup is a really good matchup for both. I think and for the fans especially, I think it's just a really exciting fight.
Yeah, yeah, I can definitely see that, and makes it interesting because I know, yeah, you train with a lot of welterweights. So does that make it hard when you want to find a matchup and then you run into? Because I mean, if you're training with, because Kamaru Usman is down there too, right? Killcliff, right? As of
Yes.
recently. Um,
Yeah, I mean, when I look up at the division right now, like I'm at number 10. Uh, I think Ian is number 11, so he's one
yeah,
right behind me. And
really.
when I look forward, I have Shavkat, Gilbert, and Kamaru.
Mhm.
So these four guys I train with. So it kind of like Gilbert, we know I'm not gonna fight him. So that's boom, one name is out. And then the other three guys is guys that I would fight, but it's kind of like it's got to make sense. It's got to be the right moment. It's got to be like because there's much more than just going out there and fighting to see who's the best and who's going to move forward. When we're in the same team, we have coaches that work with the two of us, and that's hard for them, because in a way they have to make a pick. If these two guys are going to fight, who are they going to train?
Yeah.
So there's a lot more that goes into it, and I saw that firsthand when Kamaru fought Gilbert. I was there for Gilbert. I was in his corner. I went to the fight, and I had to pick a side. And I have a good relationship with Kamaru, and I let him know. I sent him a message and say, "Hey, I'm gonna be with Gilbert. I'm gonna help him for this fight. I'm gonna corner him for this fight. So I'm gonna be across the cage with you." And I just wanted to let him know so that, hey, I respect you, and I don't want this to change anything, but I chose a side,
Yeah.
and for the relationship I have with Gilbert, and that's something that happens, and I think that it has to be worth all the trouble that we go through, So in that case, it was a title fight, so obviously it was worth, and it's understandable. So when I talk about these guys like Shavkat, Ian, and Maru, I think it has to be worth, if it's a decisive moment, is if it's a fight the UFC says, hey, either one of you guys are gonna fight for the title, or if it's a title fight, yeah, we're gonna do it, and then we're gonna talk to the coaches and see how that's gonna happen. But if I can pick one of all the other names that are there before, because it's not a title fight and it's not something like that, I will try to go that route for sure.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I can't even imagine kind of putting yourself in that situation of when you, like, for the example with Gilbert and Kamaru when they fought each other. Um, I mean, it seems like you have a much closer relationship, obviously, with Gilbert than you do with Kamaru. So picking those sides and still being able to you have that respect for each other after, like being able to understand the position that you're in. I can only imagine that being tough, but um, yeah, it makes sense. Makes sense. Um, and the last fight question for me is, what do you think about the matchup between Leon and Colby? How do you think that would go down?
I think Leon and Kobe is the fight that, for me, it's really hard to imagine how it's going to go down now, because Kobe has been inactive for so long. Like,
It's like
if
last
I get them,
March.
yeah, and if I get both of them like at their best,
Hmm.
I think it's a really tough fight for both. And I do give it like a slight edge to Leon, just because I think Leon is more well rounded in the sense that he's a better striker, really technical, and he can wrestle. We've seen that, and he can, he has the cardio, he has the physical conditioning to go 5 rounds at a high pace.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of like what you get from Kobe, like, is really good wrestling, really good cardio. A guy that can go all the 5 rounds at a high pace. But you saw, if somebody can match that, like Kamaru did,
Hmm.
that's what breaks Kobe. And I think that Leon can match that. but he has a little bit better strike. I would say like considerable better technique striking.
Yeah.
Really technical, really smart, really distance control, really good. So I would give him the edge if they were at their best. But now, when I say like, okay, we don't know what's coming, what Kobe has, it could be like Kobe's not the same. Kobe's not as good as. So that would be even more of an edge for Leon. But at the same time, I mean, you could say, hey, Kobe has been there, 2 years evolving and changing his game and has become the best version of Kobe. And he's gonna go in there and surprise everybody. I don't really know.
Mhm.
So for me, it's hard. I would, if I were gonna put my money, I would put in on Leon just because statistically, when I look at all the probabilities, I think it makes more sense. He's active, he's champion, he's super confident, coming off 2 wins against, for me, one of the best welterweights of all times, that is Kamaru. And I mean, Kobe, on the other hand, he comes off 2 losses and 1 win over Masvidal, which is a tough guy, but
Yeah.
it's not Kamaru. It's
Right.
not the caliber of Kamaru. So I don't know. I would put my money on Leon.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm kind of in that split space as well because I mean they both even they have the similar opponent with Kamaru Usman, who's one of my favorite fighters. He's been one of my favorite fighters. He's actually the first full UFC fight that I saw was his first fight with Colby Covington. So that was
Yes.
like fight of the year and everything like that. So, to see him when he fought Leon, and I remember I was at a bar in Chicago, and literally 10 seconds before the KO happened, I was talking to some random guy, and he was like, Leon's got to do something. And I was like, oh, Leon, he's not going to do anything. Kamaru's got it 50 seconds left. Nothing's going to happen. The KO happened. Oh, I was so hurt. I was mad for like 3 days.
Yeah, it
I
was
was
crazy.
so mad for 3 days because, like I said, like one of the best welterweights of all time had some. Obviously, everybody doesn't have the most exciting fights, but he had been on that streak, and his fighting style was his striking was starting to get a little better, and to see Leon go out there and in the first fight, obviously the KO, and then the second fight it was very close, but Leon edged it out. And then you compare that to like when Colby fought Kamaru Usman, they had their close fights, and but obviously Kamaru came on top of both times. What I've heard is like MMA math doesn't make sense, essentially. So like one guy could look real good against this guy, they'd be similar opponents, and then the other guy goes out starches the person he already beat made look good. So in terms of Colby, I'm starting to lean more towards him just because I've seen like if Kamaru took down Leon a few different times within both of their fights. And one thing I noticed was that Kamaru didn't get the back. Like he didn't really go for submissions. He was more focused on like kind of wrestling, control, and ground and pound. I feel like Colby in those kind of positions might take advantage of Leon and how he gets back up. Because I've noticed when he gets back up, he leaves his back open. So I could
Yeah.
see where Colby could take opportunities there and potentially lock up a submission. But then he also has to be obviously take Leon down. And you've seen that his takedown defense is pretty good. So in my personal opinion, it's really just dependent on can Colby take Leon down, and if he could take him down in those moments where Leon tries to get up with his back exposed, if Colby can take advantage of that. If he can't do that, or, Leon comes in with a whole different game plan, how he gets up or whatever, then yeah, I can see Leon winning, but I can't count Colby out either. So it's tough.
Yeah.
But I'm
Yeah,
very
yeah, it's a tough fight, but it makes sense. Makes sense what you're saying for sure.
Yeah, I hope it's on the John Jones card in November because that's what it seems like they're targeting towards. But it's almost or it's the end of August and they still haven't said anything. So
Yeah,
I hope that it comes soon.
yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. It would be awesome. Yeah, see those two fights.
yeah, yeah. I actually got to meet John Jones a couple weeks ago.
Oh, nice.
Cool. Yeah, it was at the casino in Detroit. He was doing like a meet and
Yeah.
greet to watch the Justin Gaethje versus Dustin Poirier card there. And if you bet, you have to bet like $50 or so, and then you would get admission to go in line to do the meet and greet. And I ended up betting $40 on Derek Lewis to win by first round KO. So I was so happy. I was so happy when he did the big old flying
Yeah.
because nobody thought that was going to happen. He
Yeah.
bounced off the ground.
That was a good call.
Yeah, yes, I was so happy, so happy. So, my last question for you is, what would you say is your biggest difference lifestyle-wise between your 20s and now being in your 30s?
I think the biggest difference is having a son. And it just changes like a lot of things. But I would say it changes for the better in every way. Even like I have much less time to do what I wanted to do, or just to hang around and chill, or it's really hard for me to have time off.
Hmm.
But it just made my day also like much more productive, because I started to realize so many more things that I can do. So like, and really also like show me like, it's crazy like how much more energy you get, how much more like, I don't know, real energy you get from having a son. And I feel like he even energizes me. Like whenever I get back from training, he's always at the window jumping, and then I get in, and like I'm tired of a hard session, and I come out, and I see him, and he's jumping around and hugging me and everything, and just gets me really like, okay, nice. I'm gonna come here and rest, play a little bit with my son. Then I have to go train again, and I get a good mood, a good attitude. So yeah, I would say that's the biggest change from the 20s to the 30s.
Okay. Yeah. How old is your son right now?
He's 2 years old.
Oh, 2 years old. Okay. And you are
So we're
30.
right on that change from 29 to 30.
Okay. Yep. Because you're 31 now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's all I have for you right now. I very much appreciate you coming on here. I really, when you actually said yes to it, I was happy, but I was shocked at the same time. I was like, no way. Like I don't even have like any type of media backing me up for this. It was really, I just wanted to talk to you and like get some more information because we had talked um back in Vegas for a while during the VIP thing, but then you had to leave once the event was over. And I remember I was saying, like, man, I had so many more questions I wanted to ask. Because it was my first big experience like going to UFC fights. So yeah, I really appreciate you coming and talk to me. And I want to make this like a thing, being able to talk to more fighters and have these type of conversations. So it's definitely a good start for me.
Awesome, man. Yeah, no, for me it's a pleasure, and I feel like this format is really nice. You're starting something really really different, and I think it's gonna add a lot, to the community, the MMA community. Also, because I'm sure that you're not the only one that has these questions. A lot of the fans probably have them, and now you're gonna be able to get the answers everyone wants,
Yeah.
and share it with everybody. So it's a pleasure for me to be the one to start it off with you.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. And actually, it's funny that you said that because I did ask my group chat before we started. It's like, is there any questions that you want me to ask Vicente before I start? And it was the Ian Gary and the Leon question that they all want to know so bad. So
Like,
thank you. All right. Well,
thank
I
you.
will I will definitely be sending you some songs. I look forward to getting some songs back from you. And I hope to talk to you soon.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Take care, and soon we'll talk again.
Absolutely. Have a good day.
You too.